All right, everybody, we are live. This is Rachel Jensen here, Vice President of Sales with ECI Development. I'm very, very excited here to have with me Patrick Hiebert, our Chief Operating Officer. He really is our tiny home expert within the organization, and he has agreed to do this special Q&A session with us because there has been a tremendous amount of tiny homes recently, and we want to make sure that we are getting all of your questions answered. So we have allotted the next 55 minutes or so to go through your questions. As you have anything that pops into mind, type it in there to the Q&A section and we will answer them for you. If we don't get to everybody's question, we'll make sure that our team personally reaches out to get those questions answered for you. We've had a few of these sessions before, not necessarily for tiny homes, but for our other ECI products. And what we have found is it sometimes takes a couple of people to get the ball rolling. And then after that, people just continue asking questions. Some people may not ask questions and just sit back and listen. Totally up to you. This hour is for you. So I know I normally give this long spiel and presentation. And this time I promise, Patrick, I'd only keep it to a couple of minutes. But I wanted to introduce to you what it is that we as ECI Development are doing in the region. We are starting tiny home communities, offering people geographic choice in the region. So many of you may know us as developers. We've been working in Central America for over 20 years at this point, and we've had many, many different sorts of projects. We've had condominiums, we've had single family homes, we've had eco-friendly homes as well. We've even had smaller condos, which we didn't necessarily call tiny condos at that point, but around that 400 or 500 square foot size. And so what I wanted to do is give you an overview of what it is we're working on in the countries that we are doing these tiny home villages in. And what we realized, and I mentioned this a couple minutes ago, what we realized is that tiny homes, they may have just popped up recently as a trend, although I think people have been doing RV living for a long time. But now a lot of us are looking to reduce our carbon footprint. We don't need a tremendous amount of size. For those of you on the line who are from the United States, I think we just have a tendency to acquire more and more and more and more things, get a storage unit, put the stuff in the storage unit, totally forget about it, continue to acquire more things. And at the end of the day, what we really realize is that we don't need all that stuff. Living simply is what many of us dream of doing. That gives you the ability to travel, go where you want to be, and not necessarily have all this stuff that's pulling you down. So ECI Development, we work in 4 countries in the region today: Belize, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and Panama. And at this point, we have 3 tiny home communities that we are going to be talking about. And then, of course, you can ask your specific questions during this Q&A session. So again, I'm going to just breeze through these. We do have more specific and longer presentations and info about all of these homes. So if you wanted more information, just send us an email at any point. We'll get those details to you. And then from there, we can have further conversations, but this is just an overview. So in Belize, we have a tiny home village, a test village, tiny, eco-friendly, smart. These are over-the-water bungalows. There are 3 different floor plans, studios, 1-bedrooms, and loft style. And what's really unique about these homes is that they are over a tidal lake. So we do have that water effect. You do have that glass floor. You're very, very close to San Pedro town, which is on Ambergris Caye. Ambergris Caye is the #1 tourism destination in the entire country. There are a couple of phases. The first phase is sold out at this point. Second phase, we are taking waitlist names for. So if you do have an interest in Belize, perhaps you've been following the country for a while, you like that it's an English-speaking country, you like the Caribbean feel, let us know and we will get you the details there. So we have the studio model starting under 150,000, the Sea Turtle, which is a 1-bedroom model, starting under 150,000. And then we have the Starfish, which is a loft model starting under 170,000. Financing is available up to 80% with these homes, 80%. The next tiny home community we have is at the world-renowned Osortillo Beach. This is within our Grand Pacifica community. Grand Pacifica is a large property, about 2,500 acres on the Pacific coast of Nicaragua, a stunning beachfront. You find incredible surf waves there, boogie boarding waves. It's just a really beautiful beach. And Ava, the Eco Village Osortillo, that we're going to talk about in a moment, was just debuted on Tuesday. If you would like that full presentation, that full webinar, let us know. We'll get that recording over to you. But a little bit more about Ava. It is totally off the grid. There is going to be internet. I do get that question quite a bit. Very, very good internet, by the way. But Ava is really geared towards people who want a single family home, want to be in more of a jungle scape, but have the Pacific Beach right there. Want to be within close amenities. Grand Pacifica Resort, our property there already has a pool, it has a restaurant, it has surfboards so you can do surfing lessons there. It has a tremendous amount already on site. Ava is totally off the grid, as I just mentioned, very eco-friendly, very eco-conscious. We will give you the details if you want the full webinar on this, but here are just a few of the standard features that you are going to find as you decide to become an owner at Ava. And here at Ava, there are 4 different models available, and there is 50% financing as well. Again, we can get you those details if you would like. And then the third tiny home property is in Panama. It's near Boquete, about 20-25 minutes from Boquete, in the cooler part of Panama. It's a really beautiful piece of land. I was there with my Cobb a couple of months ago, and the property truly is stunning. It's on a slight decline. When you stand at the top of the hill there, you have 270-degree views of the mountains around. There are creeks and streams and rivers running through the property, an orchard that's already there, and it truly is stunning. And what's really neat about these tiny homes that we haven't launched yet, that we are going to be launching towards the end of this year, is that these tiny homes will be integrated with teak features. Many of you, I think, know that we have teak farms throughout Panama, and we are going to be utilizing that teak, processing it to lumber, and then using it into homes as beams and flooring, and really just having it be a neat junglescape there within this property. This property is known as Freedom Village. If you would like more information on it to get on the first look list, just email us there, info@ecidevelopment.com, and we will get that information over to you. So that's the end of my formal presentation here. What we're going to do now is introduce Patrick Hiebert. Patrick, for those who don't know you, why don't you give an introduction and how it is that you first got introduced to tiny homes and this tiny home concept?
Well, thanks, Rachel. Good to be on the call with you. Excuse me. Yeah, I guess the whole kind of concept of tiny homes and eco-friendly self-sustainability started probably 25 years ago for me. I was in the software business in the technology industry, and was lucky enough to sell a software company and be able to spend some time using the knowledge I had in technology, kind of discovering eco-friendly solar systems. And I've always been kind of intrigued by self-sustainability. But at that point, I moved from a larger house. My kids were getting older, and decided to move to a smaller home, and then into a condo, and then eventually actually into a boat. And when you're living in a boat, unless you've got the world's longest extension cord, you need to produce your own power. You need to produce your own water. I was in the ocean, so you're surrounded by salt water, and you learn kind of 2 different sides to the whole sustainability concept. And one is, that to produce your own power and water and those sorts of things, but also to learn conservation and conserve water and conserve power, because the less you have to create, the less you use, the less you have to make. And also really enjoyed the kind of not having the big yard to take care of and all that sort of thing. So the whole downsizing thing, what we kind of term as quote unquote right sizing, to people that have moved into smaller places and downsized kind of know what I'm talking about. It's refreshing, like you'd mentioned earlier, the whole idea of having storage unit full of things. I was one of those guys, which I had to, I don't know why exactly, but I had a large storage unit full of things that I never even went and saw. Eventually I managed to downsize everything, and I moved to Central America. And I'm actually a Canadian citizen and a Nicaraguan resident. So I gave up my Canadian residency and became a resident of Nicaragua. I'll always have my Canadian citizenship. It's great, citizenship to have in terms of traveling around the world. And my wife is from Ecuador, and we currently make Nicaragua our home. We're actually currently in Belize. If I look out the window, I can see the test village area in West Ambergris, and we're on Ambergris Key right now. So we're very, we get the best of both worlds, to spend some time in the Caribbean islands and then spend some time at the beaches of Nicaragua and Panama. So, I guess that was kind of the gist of how I got into the tiny home living and the and the sustainability, eco-friendly side of things.
Absolutely. So I'm starting to see questions come in here. What I'm going to recommend to the folks listening is if you have a question about one of the specific properties, just write in the beginning of your question which property or what country you're referring to specifically. Of course, we can give the answer for all 3 countries, but I think if you want the specific answer, just let us know what country it is specifically. And just as an overview, so Belize, we have a hybrid system. So you will be connected to solar panels and that will run your electricity during the day, but then you are also connected to the grid. In Nicaragua, you are fully off grid. And then within Panama, it will be a hybrid system as well. So just a little bit of a background there. The projects are a little different, more or less it's still the same, eco-friendly, trying to conserve as much energy, trying to be as self-sustainable as possible. They will vary though a little bit because of the locations, but again, if you have more specific questions about specific properties, just jot that in there. And here's a question, we'll start off from the top here. From Mark, and Mark says, what is the resort's experience of tropical storms since ECI started at Grand Pacifica?
All right, I'll take that one. Well, first of all, Grand Pacifica is on the Pacific side of the country. Nicaragua, like several of the countries in Central America, border both the Caribbean Sea and the Pacific Ocean. 99.9% of hurricanes or tropical storms come, across on the Caribbean side, their Atlantic side. And by the time they cross the land to the west coast of Nicaragua, it's they're usually at worst a bad rainstorm. There's been one that was about 4 or 5 years ago, a tropical storm in Nicaragua's west coast. And, it was an unusual hurricane that hit the east coast of Costa Rica. And of course, it just created a lot of storm around the area. But, Grand Pacifica is pretty isolated from tropical storms. You do obviously get rain in the rainy season, and it comes down like any tropical rain, but usually not loaded with a lot of wind.
Right, and I think that is also good to add that, we understand the sort of elements of the countries where we build. In some of the countries, there really aren't building standards and requirements. We make sure that we are building to the elements, that the houses in Nicaragua built to seismic standard. The houses and condos in Belize are built to hurricane category 4 standards. We import windows, even the tiny homes will be built to these standards. So that's a really good question, Mark. I'm glad you asked that. But it is also important to note what sort of building construction and standards are your homes being built to.
Yeah, another thing to add there, Rachel, is a couple things that the standard building methodology in Central America is steel reinforced concrete. I mean, some builders build with wood and stick frame, but we don't. We have concrete homes or ICS homes, and they're solid as a rock, literally. And you can you imagine when you have a tiny home, for instance, the intrinsic fact that it's smaller, you don't have large wall and ceiling spans, and just in general, if you imagine making a bad example maybe, but making a Lego house the size of your fist and putting it in a box and shaking it up, it's probably going to hold together. You make one the size of a refrigerator and it's probably going to collapse, right? So just the natural tendency of smaller spans. The walls on these homes are a foot thick concrete, so they're not going anywhere. They'll be around 1,000 years from now.
Perfect. All right, next question here is from Mark, and this is one for you, Patrick. The water supply, is it fluoridated or chlorinated?
I assume we're still talking about Grand Pacifica?
Yeah, I think so, because then, yes, the first question was about Grand Pacifica as well. Mark, if you want further clarity, if you want not Grand Pacifica, just message us and we'll get that answered as well.
Yeah, the water supply at Grand Pacifica is actually pretty amazing. It's tested every couple of weeks. It is lightly chlorinated, although technically doesn't really need it. We've had it tested by a US-based water testing company not too long ago, and their comment was, you guys should bottle this water because it's amazing. And it's got a little bit of alkaline to it, so which is kind of what a lot of people in health and welfare type of things are looking for. So I the water is great. We do treat it a little bit, and the water is actually the only thing that's going to be coming into the AVA community at Grand Pacifica. Like I said, the power is completely off grid.
Perfect. And then why don't you also mention what it's going to be in Belize at the tiny homes?
Yeah, the Belize homes are a little bit different. They're built above a saltwater lagoon, basically, and the systems there are going to be individual desalinators, which is anybody that's spent any time on Ambergris Caye, the entire island has its water supply based on desalination, which is basically the removing of the salt from ocean water through basically a high pressure osmosis type of system, and it at the end of the system you get fresh water that's had its salt removed. It's also had all the bacteria and any of that sort of thing removed as well. So it's actually unnecessary to have any additional treatment of the water after that.
All right, it's a great answer. Next one here is from Mark as well, and I'm guessing this is about Nicaragua. He said, what will the yearly management fee be, and what will the maximum allowed increase per year, please?
If we're talking about Grand Pacifica's tiny homes, then I believe, correct me if I'm wrong here, Rachel, it's $148 per month.
Correct. Yep, exactly.
Which is something like whatever, 1,700-ish per year, just doing that math in my head. The HOA has a maximum allowance of increase of, I believe it's up 5% or the, what's the term I'm looking for here? Help me out. The 5% or the cost of living increase in that country.
Perfect.
Although, if we go by the records of what's happened at Grand Pacifica over the last years, it hasn't been, the HOA fees for the existing homes and condos there hasn't been increased in over a dozen years. So I think 13, 14 years ago.
And then to answer that on the Belize side, it's about $250 a month. As you can imagine, these are over the water homes, so there's a little bit more maintenance that needs to be done. Each of the HOAs are a little different in each of the communities in terms of what they cover. So if you want something a little bit more specific for each of the homes, just email us there, info@ecidevelopment.com, and we'll get those over to you. All right, next question I'm seeing here is from Carlos, and he says, at the Ava property, I see the properties are off-grid. Do they have storage batteries for solar, and what is their capacity? How does the water and sewage work at the property since it's off-grid? We touched on the water a little bit, but why don't we start at the top?
Touch on the water again. The water is brought into the community from the well at Grand Pacifica, and like I said, it's very high quality water, so we want to keep going with that. The sewage is actually is stored. So these homes are gray water reuse homes. So they have a separation system, basically dual plumbing of gray water and black water. And the gray water is used to water your gardens and whatever else you want to water with the reuse of the gray water. So that's, the water that comes out of your sink in your bathroom or, that sort of thing. And only the black water, the toilet water, is what goes into the storage tanks and then is transported to, we have a new state-of-the-art wastewater treatment facility at Grand Pacific. It was just completed this last January or February. So that's been operating for about half a year now. And literally that, we try to do as much as we can with the the eco-friendliness of the entire property. So the water that comes out the back end of that wastewater treatment center is clear, and theoretically you could even drink that. Of course we don't do that, but we store it and we use it to water the golf course, because we have a large river, two or three large rivers that run past the property, but we're not the last community on that river, so or on those rivers. So we don't want to take all the water out of the river to water the golf course. There's other people that rely on it as, for a way of life, and, they're for their livestock and for their families. So we try to minimize our use of river water and use as much as we can of recycling and watering the greens and the fairways on the golf course. What else was in there? I'll go back to the
storage batteries. So at the Ava property, I see
it depends a little bit. Depends. The Ava properties do have storage, battery storage. They're fully off grid, so you're surviving through the night on the battery power. Basically, the way it works is during the day, your solar panels are both producing the power that you use in the house, plus the excess power is going to be stored in the batteries. Depends on the model, but on average, the size of the house, there's a 2-bedroom Ava home as well. It's got a bit more, but the average is 16 400 amp hour 6 volts, I believe, in this project. So it's a lot of storage. Allows you to run an air conditioner, fridge, and all the other things. Have a party and have the music playing and all that through the night. So we've done these we have another property or another community at the property called Milagro Verde, which means green miracle, which was kind of my brainchild from a dozen years ago. When I was mentioned that I lived in a boat, I wanted to take those concepts of eco-friendly living and self-sustainability and put that into homes. And one of the beauties, I was living in Vancouver Island at the time, and one of the beauties of moving to Nicaragua is it takes about a third of the number of solar panels to produce the same amount of power as it does in Canada, just because the closer you are to the equator, the more direct sunlight is, and you get a lot more power generated out of it. So the storage depends on the home's requirements. We match up the batteries capacities to the draw. I mean, like literally, we take every little thing to the last little 3-watt LED light bulb, and add it to the fridge, add it to a toaster, add it to a microwave, add it to how much time during the day you're using that to create the watt hours that you're going to be using, and then we oversize the storage capacity a little bit. And wherever possible, we probably will have small wind turbines as well, because obviously the sun is great, but it doesn't shine at night. So any little bit of added power that, from a breeze at night really helps keep the batteries topped up as well.
And we'll segue that question right there into James's, who asks, can we add batteries later for the solar in Belize?
You can. One of the reasons we didn't go kind of fully off-grid in Belize, well, there's a multiple number of reasons, but one of them was to get the environmental compliance plan that we had to go through with the government of Belize. And every little thing, like the sewer system in the test Belize system in the project is a vacuum flush system. So literally, if there's any problems with the sewage, it stops working and it has to be fixed right away. And that was one of the demands that we had to go through from the environmental department. And likewise with battery storage and that sort of thing, we're on top of a lagoon that does have is a tidal lagoon, and it does pour in and out every tide change into the ocean. So you don't want to be dumping battery acids or anything that's not good for the ocean in there. And that was more of an ecological decision than anything else. We can get exemptions. There has to be some care taken. Basically, the batteries have to be stored in a way so that if there is ever any damage, that there's no way that they could get knocked off into the ocean or leak into the ocean. So
very good. The next question here is from Emily, and I can answer this one. She asks, hi, I am interested to receive more details about Freedom Village in Panama. Where exactly is the place, close to what city? And I see a lot of questions here, Emily, so I'll just answer them as I read them out loud. So the Freedom Village property is located in between David and Boquete, which is on the western side of Panama. And for those of you who have been to Panama before, or maybe you're doing your research, this is an area that's really well known by expats and tourists because it's cooler in climate than Panama City and other parts of of the country. Typically, it has the slogan "Eternal Springtime," where during the day it's 75, 80 degrees, and at night it's 60 to 65 degrees. So that's typically the weather that you would find there in this area. But we are directly between David and Boquete. David is where folks fly into from Panama City. You can get a flight about 30 minutes from Panama City to David, or you can drive about 5.5, 6 hours. And then when people land in David, we're about 25 minutes from there in Freedom Village. We don't necessarily have price ranges yet. That's all coming together over the next 4 to 6 months. We really plan to release the site map to folks, the opportunities for ownership. I know Patrick, Mike, and I have been working with the architect and the surveyor and really identifying what we want where in the property. At this point, Emily, don't want to say too much because we are still working with the details, and I want to make sure that we're giving you information that's finalized and not yet changing. So I would say 4 to 6 months is when we will have the plans ready for folks to take a look at. We are going to be starting with the tiny homes there. But in addition, we have about 110 acres in total. So there are going to be condominiums, and there'll also be single family home lots too. So it'll vary as to how many homes. I'm not entirely sure yet, but there will be a variety across the board. But we'll make sure we keep you and everybody else posted. And for those of you who want to be on that first right of refusal list or the first look list, you just can email us info@ecidevelopment.com and then just put FV for Freedom Village, FV-Panama in the subject line, and we will acknowledge that that email has been received, and we'll get you on that first look list. And this question kind of segues into the one we were just talking about. Is Boquete a tourist destination? Just wondering about rental potential. Yes, Boquete is a huge tourist destination. The picture there on the top left is one that I took when we were there a few months ago. And it is a cooler climate, lots of gardens, lots of colors. You have the mountains, very fresh. When you breathe in, it's like take a deep breath of fresh air. I mean, quite literally. You have water running through, specifically with our property. We have creeks running through the property. We have rivers as well. So it really is a very, very beautiful sort of setting. But yes, to answer your question there, Boquete is a tourist destination, and it does have the potential to do really well in the rental market for both nightly and also long-term. All right, next question I'm seeing here is from Lauren, and she says, tell us about property ownership in Belize as a non-citizen. Is there an HOA fee per month? Can we rent out the tiny homes in Belize? So yes, and this is true for all of the properties that we work in, all of the countries that we work in. Foreigners have the same rights as locals where you get title to the property. These properties are fully titled, so you own them. So you have the same rights there being a foreigner in the country owning properties. In Belize, the HOA for the tiny homes are about $250 a month. That includes boat, where we're located, it's on an area called West Ambergris, and you do take a boat to get back and forth from the area to San Pedro, which is the primary town there on the island. It takes about 5 minutes, not even. So your HOA fees cover those boat fees, and there's a plethora more that it covers, but I'd be happy to go through that with you in more detail. But then your last question here, Lauren, is can we rent out the tiny homes in Belize? Yes, and that goes generally across the board for all the properties. They can be rented out on a nightly basis, on a long-term basis, just depending on what you prefer as an investor. I think all of the homes really have the potential to do quite well. We've targeted sort of different groups there, and I think that we have a really great market of folks who are going to be staying with us. I know specifically at the Ava community, we have some of the best surf breaks there in Nicaragua right outside of our property. I mean, the one where you see with that sunset, that was taken from the property. That's a fellow there. As you can probably might be able to see surfing on the waves. I had it as my background before when I was showing my face, but incredible surf breaks, and it's just a 2-minute walk to the beach. So there in Nicaragua, we see that we're going to have the surfer demographic. I think all of these homes we'll definitely see a digital nomad population. And now more than ever, I think many people are realizing that they can pick up their laptop, open it up, connect to Wi-Fi, and start working. So as we were really creating these communities, something that we wanted to ensure is that they all had really great Wi-Fi. Because what that means is people will be able to come, open up their computer, work from anywhere, and maybe they'll spend a few months in each location, or maybe they'll be partial to Belize or Panama or the Ava community at Grand Pacifica. doesn't really matter where they end up, but we do have obviously options for everybody. But that kind of was a long answer to your questions. Yes, the homes can be rented out. And of course, we can talk to you about your options there, and you're able to come. The nice part too is you're able to come as an owner. There's a lot of flexibility with how often you visit. And if, Lauren, you decide you want to move to Belize full time and be a full-time owner there at the tiny homes at Test Village, you just let us know that too, and we'll get your home out of the rental market.
Hey, Rachel, I'll just add one or two more things there. One other thing on the rental side too is we're working with a wellness retreat group, and for most of these locations. So that obviously helps a lot with your occupancy and your nightly rates and everything to kind of drive that up, and helps with the return on investment as well.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that's a really important point to make is we didn't just see that these tiny homes were trending or really becoming parts of people's lifestyle and said, let's duplicate it. When we were, sitting down and at the drawing table, we all really wanted to identify who these homes would serve in terms of rentals, what's the demographic. And so when creating Ava, Spencer and Patrick put a lot of thought into why would somebody want to come to Ava? Why would these wellness groups want to come here? And then really built those features. So you will see in each of the tiny homes is that, yes, we understand the space is small. It's a tiny home. But what we incorporated is these third spaces is for people to get together with groups. Like if this wellness group wants to get together and do yoga, they can go do yoga on the beach, or they can meet underneath the palapa and have breakfast by the pool. But integrating these sort of third spaces was really crucial as we were creating the designs of these homes. And, ambergris, obviously it's over water, but we're still able to incorporate third spaces, including large palapas. A lot of, all the homes have rooftops as well, where people can enjoy the sunrise or the sunset from there. So it is something I think that really was identified as we were putting these communities together.
And most definitely, like you mentioned, the third spaces. I mean, a lot of this tiny home discussion really started a few years ago when I was first living at Grand Pacifica, and we were building 5,000 square foot homes. Mm-hmm. And when you have the climate that you have year round in these locations, you realize that, 90% of the day you're sitting either around a pool or you're, on your deck looking out at the ocean or whatever it is that you'd like to do. But you're really spending a lot of your time not indoors or at very least not in very many places indoors, right? So I started to realize that, I've got all this space, all these rooms I've got to take care of. I never go in them. And, that we started to kind of use that as part of the incentive for making efficient homes that, they have the kitchen, they have the location where watching your TV. Some times we have, TVs outside where people rather sit out in the evening on their deck and watch TV from there. But in general, they're just efficiently made spaces that you really don't, once you're living in them, you don't really think of, wow, I don't have much space in this house, because really you're sleeping in it. And then the rest of the time you're enjoying the climate and the area, the ocean, the river, whether you want to go kayaking or whatever. And you'd mentioned digital nomads. And sometimes I think some of these terms we throw around a lot because we're in the business and we know what they mean. But for anybody that doesn't kind of know what a digital nomad is, in recent years, it's become easier and easier with internet being available just about everywhere, and lots of people finding out that they can work from home. In fact, certainly during these times where people are in quarantine, a lot more people discovered that they can work from home. And so now they're looking for why do I want to, stay in my house in Idaho or whatever, if I can, spend some time there maybe, but some time elsewhere. So what we see is people, either renting or buying homes, but in the case of digital nomads, it's typically they'll rent for 3 to 6 months. And for example, one of the reasons why we're making multiple communities like that, like we are here with the tiny homes, is someone might choose, 3 months in Belize, 3 months in Nicaragua, 3 months in Panama. Maybe they're going to Japan for 3 months or whatever, and that's how they want to break up the year. And then maybe they'll do something different next year. But what we've done is really tailored these communities to the digital nomads as well. I mean, obviously there's the wellness groups, there's the surfers, there's the divers in Belize, there's different groups that like to to go to these places, but the digital nomads are a big market for people that are renting out their homes. And, you know, it's nice to have a guest there for 3 months. You know what you're gonna have 100% occupancy for those 3 to 6 months, and then the next one moves in, and that's becoming a really popular thing. And these are people that are, you know, they're not retired, they're still working, they're just working from wherever they are in the world, because what they do is capable of being done on the internet.
Exactly. And I know that we went a little farther in your question about rentals, but I think that it really is important, especially as you are looking at the sort of flexibility and options that you have when you come in as an owner, because it's good to know, can I rent it? If I can, how long? Maybe you want to live there full time, but you do have that sort of flexibility. Next question I'm seeing here, I'm gonna let you answer it, Patrick, is, are the smart features available for customization as far as which ones I would want to include or exclude?
Yes, the short answer is yes. You know, we realize some people like smart features, some people really don't want anything like that in their home, and that's understandable. One thing, you know, I like the way the question is worded, which ones would I like to, what would I want to include? Mm-hmm. I think it goes along with the same lines. You know, let me step back for a second here with the eco-friendly stuff. I don't think, you know, eco-friendly homes and communities are sustainable unless they're also financially better off. And by that, I mean, you can feel good about, oh, you know, I'm saving the planet, I'm doing all this, but if it's costing you more or it's uncomfortable, you're probably not going to do it long term. So one of the things that I like to call our company and our employees are eco-sensible. You know, we're not eco-fanatics, we're eco-sensible. And by that, the regulator or the reasonableness test is usually, you know, does it save me money as well as, you know, is it saving the planet? So, you know, we look at things like the green roofs, and people could say, well, that's kind of ridiculous. That little piece of grass isn't going to do anything for anybody in the planet. Well, fair enough. It's barely any space. But what it is doing is insulating your home, which means your air conditioner doesn't have to run as much, saves your batteries longer, and all sorts of things. So, you know, there's a reason that we put in the features on the eco side, and there's a reason that we put features on the smart side. You know, if I stay on that air conditioning idea, the air conditioner is the single most large draw for power in these homes. Your refrigerator is next, and then a lot of things kind of taper off after that. But the air conditioner is the challenging one. And for instance, one of the smart features we have, which I use now in all my personal rental units around Central America, is a Wi-Fi thermostat. Sorry, and basically what that lets me do is I know when my air conditioners are on, I know what they're set to. I can have automatic features that turn them off, and you know, it saves me a fortune in cost, because, you know, people will go, you know, they'll check out, or maybe they're done for the day. They're not going to check out till 2 in the afternoon, but they've set their air conditioner down to a freezing point, and they're not in the unit, but their check-in time comes up, and I just have the system switch the air conditioner off right off the bat, and switch the fridge off, and all sorts of different things. Plus, you know, you can set minimum set points. You know, some people will come in and set the air conditioner, and well, in Celsius degrees, they're usually around 15 or 16 is the minimum, which is, you know, getting close to where it seems like icicles are forming on the window, but it's not really necessary. So, you know, there's smart features where you can set the minimum set points, and it's just as comfortable. It gets there just to that temperature just as quickly. And so there's a lot of features, you know, that are like that, you know, we can talk about, and we'll have a smart features white paper at some point here, so that, you know, people can understand the different ones. You might not want to say, you know, Alexa, you know, close my window or whatever, but you know, there's different types of features that you can choose. And as we get further down the road with these, we're going to have kind of more of a catalog approach to the features that you can add or subtract, kind of like when you're buying a car, and there's an option to add on.
All right, thank you for that great answer there. All right, next one is, what are the taxes like, and is flood insurance required? And I'm guessing this is here in Belize. taxes on property, I think you mean property taxes are absolutely minimal in the country. Typically for a studio 1-bedroom, you're looking at about $300 to $400 US a year. Flood insurance, I mean, it's not necessarily required. We give you a couple of options of companies that you can reach out to, not necessarily required, but if you want it, then of course you are able to purchase the flood insurance there. So great question. Yep, in Belize. Thank you for that clarification.
And the other thing to add there, Rachel, if we're talking about the tiny homes in Belize, they're 5 or 6 feet above the water line and directly above it. So it would take an enormous surge to, and just for people to know, the tiny homes in Belize are on the leeward side of the island, which really doesn't get the weather that the reef side does. So, you know, and the other side to that coin is that these are concrete homes. You know, if you had the only thing you'd really have to worry about is your furniture, and you know, if you thought there was going to be a flood, you could put it up higher or whatever. But the concrete homes aren't damaged at all. You literally just get your pressure washer inside and spray the tiles clean, and away you go again. So these homes are pretty bulletproof that way for the climate.
All right, awesome. Next question here. This is a great one, Russell. Is Belize and Nicaragua, do you gain a citizen visa in either of these countries? Yes, well, not citizen, but there are investor residency programs. So essentially you can get your green card in these countries. In Nicaragua, with a $30,000 investment, you are able to qualify for your permanent residency. It's an investor residency. You can go that route, obviously, with an ABA home there. They're priced a bit under $100,000. In Panama as well, you do have the ability through an investor residency. There's one called the Friendly Nations Visa, which if you invest a minimum of $10,000 in land, and if you're from one of these 50 countries that Panama deems friendly, then you're able to apply for residency as well. That's a permanent residency. And I think that one has probably been one of our most popular, paired up with our TEAC, actually. For people who are looking for residency sooner rather than later, that Friendly Nations visa is so easy. It's probably the easiest out of all 3 countries here, the least amount of requirements. It's super easy to maintain. It's permanent. So if you want more information, I know you didn't say Panama there, but Panama is really easy. And then in Belize, there is an investor residency that just came out. It's if you make an investment of $250,000 or more in the country, then you can receive an investor residency. It's a 5-year residency, which can lead to a citizenship over time, not guaranteed, but you can apply for it. So you do have that sort of flexibility in all of these countries. Our property consultants are very familiar with these residencies and options to citizenships, should you choose. But do note that there is a difference between residency and citizenship. Residency essentially is a green card. It allows you to be in that country full-time for as long as you want to be there. You're not there as a tourist, and that holds a lot of weight. I mean, especially in times like this, where if you want to be in another country, if you want to, like, let's say, live in Belize during all of this that's going on, well, you have the right to be there because you are a Belizean resident. Citizenship is when you essentially get a passport to that country. That's a lot more difficult in most of the world, unless you're paying a pretty hefty price. But we are, of course, open to talking to you about your options depending on what you wanted to accomplish. And then we did talk about the ability to rent the property, Russell. And then you said, what are the rules and regulations? You know, a lot of it just depends on which community you're in. We can certainly talk about it with you a little bit more specifically depending, but there are no, and I saw a question that kind of alluded to this, but there are no, there's no time restraints as to how long you can spend at your home if it is in the rental program. If you want to come down for a couple of months, come down for a couple of months, just give us notice. If you want to come down for a week here, a week there, just give us notice and we'll block out that room for you. If it is already reserved, we'll do our best to get that person in a comparable room and make it work out for everybody. But it is your home, so you do have the right to come and go as you please there. All right, next one I'm seeing is from Bernd, and he says, I noticed the first phase at Grand Pacifica, this is for Ava specifically, is already almost sold. Once this will be finished, when will the second phase start? And I think I saw a message from one of our sales agents today that she had a reservation for 14 and 15. So it may be sold at this point, but second phase, we are ready to launch, in the next couple of days here. So we'll get ready on the pre-construction sales there, Bernd. If you notice any homes in numbers 16 through 30, that second phase, let us know. I think by now, I know at this point, number 21 is already spoken for, but just let us know and we'll be happy to help you through that as well. Anything else you wanted to add there, Patrick, with second phase and Ava?
No, it's just been pretty amazing. I think, it's been less than 2 weeks, I believe, since we've kind of started even talking, almost a soft launch of Ava. And amazingly in this conversation, we haven't come up with the term Plan B, but what we're seeing is a ton of interest from people, US, Canada, Europe, looking for an option to being in those countries right now. And seeing Nicaragua especially, and the other Central American countries as well, as a really viable option. The cost of living is much less, the climate is nicer, and all the great things about these countries. And so, it's just in some ways it's surprising at how fast these homes are being spoken for, but in other ways, I guess it's understandable. People are really looking for something like this.
Exactly. So I see one here from Elaine. She says, I thought it started at 2 p.m. Pacific. What did I miss? Elaine, we're recording this, so we'll make sure that we get you a copy of the recording. We just in the beginning, the first 10, 15 minutes, we really just covered the 3 different opportunities. And then we delved right into the questions that folks were asking. Next question here is from Jim. He says, how does purchase then rent out work? So pretty straightforward, Jim. If you decide that you want to rent out your home, then you let us know. You're able to enter a rental agreement with us. For our tiny homes in Belize, if you do want to rent that out, then you will need to come through our property management company. There's a little bit more flexibility there at Grand Pacifica. You can use Airbnb, but that's totally up to you. And just depending on what property you're interested in, we can go into those details with you. And my guess is that Panama will probably be through our rental management team as well. It gets really hard. And I do want to actually talk about this for a moment. When people are wanting to do Airbnb and are not at the property, it's not easy enough to do, but I think a lot of us get really comfortable with this concept of Airbnb when we are living in the same town, or we have a reliable friend or family member who's able to get the house clean, make sure it's ready for the guest, make sure everything is perfect and set. And when you're in another country, it's very, very difficult to do that and accomplish that successfully if you're not living there full time. So while Airbnb is great to get a renter, I would say always work with the on-site management team to make sure the process is as smooth as possible. Because I have heard some horror stories from people who went on a vacation to a foreign country, and the check-in process or the home was not exactly as they expected. And there are a lot of variables there. So just bear that in mind as you're going through the process. We've been doing this, the property management, for over 20 years at this point, and really do want to keep it as easy for you as possible. Next question I'm seeing here is from Lauren, and she says, when will phase 2 and Belize be completed? So we started the pre-sales for that. There's a wait list. At this point, we have about 23 people on the wait list, but we are in the process of working through our phase 1. Phase 1 owners are currently choosing the location that they want on site. I'm guessing that some folks from that wait list will get moved up to phase 1. But what I would recommend, Lauren, is if you are interested, just message us here and we'll go through, we'll send you the wait list form. You do need to complete a form to be on that wait list for either phase 1, or you'll get moved over to phase 2 if nothing opens up in phase 1. Alyssa here asks, how frequently will transportation go back and forth from Ambergris Key to San Pedro? Once a day, twice a day, continuously? Right now we have the boat slated for about 6 times a day. It could change just depending on frequency. If people want to go at a time that the boat is not running, or let's say they're in San Pedro and they want to come over when the boat is not running, there'll certainly be an option for them to call the captain, and for a small fee, they'll be able to get the boat to come over and pick them up and then take them to the other side. All right, next question here is from Alyssa, and she said, do you opt in for the rental program? And yes, you do opt into the rental program. You let us know if you want to do the rental program, if you want to do nightly, if you want to do long-term, maybe you want to try a mix of both. Just let us know and we'll be able to help you with that. And then, is there a limit on how many nights or weeks an owners can stay on property? Nope. It's nice because there's a lot of flexibility with these properties. You're able to come and go as you please. We have a couple of branded hotels, or a couple more restrictions there as to owner usage. but this one you are able to come and go as you please. All right, Patrick, here's a question for you. This is from James, and he says, do you foresee having a named hotel chain manage these tiny homes as you have done with your other properties?
Yes, we're working with, well, two different hotel chains right now. The tiny homes are kind of a unique, one of the chains has kind of a high-end tiny home type of brand that they do have already. Another one wants to create that and is really looking to us to help them do that. So yeah, it's definitely something in the works. It's not set in stone yet, and I can't tell you exactly when, but that definitely is something we'd like to do.
All right, fantastic. Next one here is from Lauren, and she said, is there dock space available for owners in Belize? Yes, there will be limited. A few boats will be able to park there on the dock, Patrick, unless I'm mistaken, but I think you know that a little bit.
Yeah, no, I was actually just thinking of some of our other properties, and then you're right, in Belize.
Yeah,
Too many
Boquete,
communities
we can get
on
it
the
down
brain
that
right
river.
too many communities on the brain right now. So I had that question about the Nicaragua location the other day, so that's what I was thinking. But yes, there is. I mean, there's actually 2 or 3 pretty long piers right now. The space, the quote unquote lagoon that people talk about in Ambergris Key or in San Pedro is really the space of water between San Pedro and West Ambergris. We talk about being on top of the lagoon, but ours is on top of a very small lagoon that drains into the ocean. But the lagoon actually has 3 or 4 piers in that very area. I have my wife and I have a sailboat here, and we enjoy going out either in that lagoon area or out by the reef, for the afternoon on weekends. And so, boating's a big part of life for a lot of people, when you're living on an island. So, the world kind of revolves around the water around here.
It does. And since you had Nicaragua on your mind there, I know this has been asked a couple of times about if there's a marina close by or if there's a spot for people to park boats. And what would you say to that one?
Well, Nicaragua, we're about an hour and a half away from the closest main, actual marina. The Grand Pacifica's longer term plans does have a marina as part of it. There's another river down just about maybe half a mile from the Asachio one where our Ava homes are. And that's got a wider mouth, a deeper entry into the ocean, and has some opportunity for a breakwater. We have the marina compliance plan. Marina is the Nicaraguan environmental department. So, we have all the pieces we need to do it. Just kind of need the number of, I'd love it because, like I said, I love boating. So the more people that want to get a marina there, the better for me. So I'm all over that.
All righty, very nice. Next question, and I see 2 that are around this topic, so I will kind of bring them both up at once. Calvin asks at Grand Pacifica, how far and how does one get around to do errands, grocery shopping, bank, ATM? And then the follow-up with that to be is there a shuttle going back and forth to Managua?
Yeah, so I missed that question. I'm trying to see where
that's from Calvin. At Grand Pacifica, how far and how does one get around? Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, we're about 45 minutes from Managua, but my wife and I like to also go to San Rafael, which is a town about, 15-20 minutes away, that has an outdoor market. And I mentioned this the other day when we were talking about Nicaragua. It's amazing because if you picture one of those burlap sacks that come up to about your hip height, we carry one of those around the market and fill it up with whatever vegetables, potatoes, tomatoes, and fruit, mangoes and papaya and all sorts of amazing fruit. And we got to the front and to pay for it. And I was even though I've been living in Nicaragua a long time, I was still quite surprised at sometimes how cheap things are after you've traveled around to different places and come back home. And it was $2.80 for a huge sack full of fruits and vegetables, and would last us for several weeks. So, you get an idea of the cost there. We actually, as far as a ATM, we have a banking ATM right on the property. It works fine for North American bank cards and credit cards. If you want to go to more of a North American style grocery shopping, like the typical, they have two main chains. One's called La Union and one's La Colonia. There's actually a Walmart in Managua as well. But, for that kind of, and it's called a Price Mart, which is a lot like a Costco. It's actually owned by Costco, I think. But so you have all those options, normal options as well, 40, 45 minutes away for doing major shopping events.
And so I'm just going to ask Betsy's question here, because I think that they really go well together. And she said, do I need to have a car at Ava to live in Nicaragua, or is there a shuttle to Managua?
Oh yeah, generally we've had shuttles in the past. Obviously right now tourism's way down because of the virus thing, and so we haven't really had the shuttle going. But I mean, that's the other thing too, whether you go in the shuttle or whether you just have a driver come and pick you up, it's so inexpensive, that it's cheaper than a cab ride, probably 15 blocks in North America to take a cab to Managua. So there's options, but we actually did the shuttle. We had a bigger 16 passenger van that was more for the camaraderie, I think, than for the actual cost savings, because it really doesn't cost that much. And other people are going all the time back and forth, and including myself. When we're there, we'll go, my wife and I will go to a movie or out for dinner or whatever. And so, it's a community. So people say, oh, I forgot to pick this up when I went shopping. Can you grab me, one of those? And then, so it's nice to have that as well.
Yes, absolutely. And I just saw something here from Alyssa, and thank you, Alyssa, for pointing this out. She said she's just getting a little confused with the cross talking about all of them. So Patrick, let's just make sure for the next couple of minutes here, we're very clear about which project or which country we're talking about. But she also asks, and I think this is a really great question, is there shared ownership among each of the properties? Can you stay at all of them?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure about shared ownership. I know we have some people, or what that question exactly is referring to. We have some people that are, like I mentioned earlier, that are interested in buying a tiny home at each one of the communities and then just splitting up their year and staying at them. But you can certainly stay at any of them, all of them, however you want. And we don't have, if this is a timeshare question, that's not really our thing. We do have some homes where people have gotten together and had, what's called fractional ownership, where there might be 5 or 6 owners in a home. That's not that uncommon, for any touristy kind of area. But typically, our homes are owned by, one buyer, and then they use them themselves and rent them out. And I realize there is a bit of, I guess, crosstalk or, confusion a little bit about which community sometimes we're talking about. But the other side of that is that it's actually a pretty good thing. There's a lot of, there's a lot of similarities, a lot of, interesting things that we do in all the communities. So, they're all based on the same kind of concept of the tiny, efficient, eco-friendly type of living. And that's not giving up any luxuries or anything either. I mean, we have flat screen TVs, and I like to watch my sports on projectors and things like that. And that's not going to stop happening, just because the home's smaller than your average home.
Yep. And
or run by batteries. you don't know. Literally you don't know. One of my favorite things is to see is when any of these homes, or in these communities, the country sometimes will have a power outage. Like I'm fortunate to have internet here right now, and where I'm staying in Belize, because we had a real bad electrical storm last night, and the lightning hit the building next door literally and blew up our routers and everything. So we got to piece back together, and that's not that common, but it just happens to happen right before a webinar, of course. But it's funny, because I know in Grand Pacifica, in our eco-friendly communities, when if the power goes out on the grid, all of a sudden everybody's coming over to visit people that are living in the eco-friendly homes because they don't even know the power has gone out, and they're coming over there, they're plugging in their laptops and their phones and recharging them, or using their internet because their internet's still going because it doesn't, require the grid. So, it's almost become a social gathering reason. When the power goes out, people gather in the homes that are self-sufficient.
Fantastic. And then I also just want to point out that we have done a specific webinar for AVA, the tiny home community there. That was on Tuesday. We can certainly send you those recordings if you want the more specific one. In Nicaragua, Panama is not yet ready for us to have a big, long discussion about, but we can certainly add you to that first look list. And then Belize, right now, we haven't had a formal presentation. We actually didn't even have a formal launch of this project. It's really just been word of mouth at this point, but we certainly have marketing materials for you to go through there. And like with Panama, we haven't done a formal presentation just because it's been doing so well without one, but we can certainly get those sort of details to you. I'm going to have a couple more questions here. And then what I would like to do, if we don't get all the questions answered, is we'll have your property consultant reach out. Lauren asks here, is in Belize, do the units come furnished? And this is true for all of the properties. There's a furniture package that you're able to purchase in addition to the price of the home. And the reason for that is if you want to live in yours full time and you don't necessarily want the furniture package, you don't need to purchase it. But if you do want to be part of the rental program, then it is going to be required that you have that furniture package. But that's totally up to you, Lauren, if you're planning to live in your condo or not, or in your tiny home or not. There is the extra furniture package. Bernd asks, will the homes in the second phase at AVA have the same layout? So yes, there are 4 floor plans right now for AVA. Those floor plans will stay the same unless we see anything that needs to change. But at this point, we've spent a lot of time and going back and forth and making sure they're as efficient as possible. But Bernd, what I would recommend is at least picking a lot number. And then over the next couple of months, you can pick your specific home, your specific model, if you're still trying to figure out which one is right for you. Now, I think what we'll do is end on this question. This is an awesome one from our good friend James in Colorado. And he says, does ECI have plans for tiny homes beyond Belize, Grand Pacifica, and Boquete?
Yes, absolutely. We were very close to starting, and we're got put on hold a little bit, but we're still in the works on a community in the wine country in Argentina. And we're looking at Ecuador in the highlands there. There's some beautiful places in South America and Costa Rica and Central America as well. So yes, these tiny home communities are, really popular, and we're just kind of picking out the best spots for where they can be.
All right, fantastic. So with that, we will say goodnight to everybody. We have the recording going, so you will get a copy of this afterward. Feel free to reach out to your property consultant or reach out to us generally, info@ecidevelopment.com. If you'd like more information, we're happy to get that your way. Thank you everybody so much for joining us for this tiny home webinar. Again, if you want the specifics about a specific community, just send us a note and we'll be happy to get those to you. Thank you everybody so much for joining. Patrick, thank you so much for your insight and your awesome answers there. And we look forward to having the chance to connect with everybody in person at some point in the near future. Have a great night, great day, great morning, whatever time of day it is for you. Bye-bye.